The wind cut through the narrow alley like a knife. Taman pulled his thin blanket tighter around his shoulders, but it did little to keep out the cold. At 12 years old, he had been living on the streets of Seoul for almost 2 years now. His mother had died when he was 10, and there was no one else to take care of him. No father, no relatives, no one who cared if he lived or died. He had learned to survive by being smart and staying invisible. During the day, he would search through trash bins behind restaurants, looking for food that was still good enough to eat. At night, he would find shelter wherever he could. Sometimes it was an abandoned building. Sometimes it was just a cardboard box in an alley. Tonight, he had found a spot behind a large dumpster in a quiet street. The dumpster blocked some of the wind, which made it slightly warmer than being out in the open. Taman hugged his knees to his chest and tried to think about something other than the cold. He thought about his mother. She had been sick for a long time before she died. Even when she was too weak to work, she had always made sure he had something to eat. The blanket he carried with him now was the last thing she had given him. It was old and full of holes, but it was all he had left of her. He would rather freeze to death than throw it away. The snow had started falling an hour ago. Small white flakes drifted down from the dark sky, covering the ground in a thin layer of white. Taman knew that tonight would be dangerous. If the temperature dropped too low, he might not wake up in the morning. He had seen it happen to other homeless people. They would go to sleep and never open their eyes again. He was about to close his eyes and try to sleep when he heard a strange sound. It was like metal scraping against concrete, followed by a wet, gurgling noise. Taman froze. His first instinct was to run. Strange sounds in the night usually meant danger, but curiosity got the better of him. Slowly, he stood up and peeked around the dumpster. What he saw made him gasp. There was something lying on the ground about 10 feet away. At first, Taman thought it was a person, but as his eyes adjusted to the darkness, he realized it was not human. The creature was tall, at least 7 feet long, with skin that seemed to glow faintly in the darkness. The glow was a soft silver color like moonlight on water. The being had long limbs and a body that looked both familiar and completely alien at the same time. But what caught Taman's attention most was the dark liquid pooling around the creature. Even in the dim light, he could see it was not red like human blood. It was dark blue, almost black, and there was a lot of it. The creature was dying. Taman's heart pounded in his chest. He should run. He should get as far away from this thing as possible. Whatever it was not from Earth. That meant trouble. Big trouble. If the government found out about this, there would be soldiers and scientists everywhere. They might take him away and ask him questions. They might lock him up. But as he watched, the creature made another sound. It was a weak, pitiful noise like a whimper. The being's chest rose and fell in short, rapid breaths. One of its hands, which had 3 long fingers instead of 5, reached out as if searching for something to hold on to. Taman had heard that sound before. It was the same sound his mother had made in her last days. It was the sound of someone who was suffering, someone who was scared, someone who did not want to die alone. He took a step forward, then stopped. His mind was racing. This was insane. He did not know what this creature was or where it came from. It could be dangerous. It could be diseased. It could be anything, but it was also dying and alone in a cold alley, just like he almost was every night. Taman made his decision. He walked over to the creature slowly, holding his blanket in both hands. As he got closer, he could see more details. The creature's face was long and elegant, with large eyes that were now half closed. Strange markings covered its skin, glowing faintly like dying embers. It was wearing some kind of suit made of material Taman had never seen before. The suit was torn in several places, and that was where the blue blood was coming from. The creature's eyes flickered open as Taman approached. They were a deep golden color like the sun at sunset. For a moment, they focused on the boy. Taman saw fear in those eyes, but also something else. Sadness, pain, and maybe, just maybe, a tiny bit of hope. Taman knelt down beside the creature. He did not say anything. What could he say? This being probably did not understand Korean anyway. Instead, he did the only thing he could think of. He unfolded his blanket, the precious blanket his mother had given him, and carefully draped it over the creature's body. The blanket was small compared to the being's large frame, but Taman tucked it around the creature as best as he could. He made sure to cover the worst of the wounds, hoping it might help somehow. The creature's golden eyes watched him the entire time. Taman thought he saw something like surprise in that gaze. When the blanket was in place, Taman sat down beside the creature. He did not touch it, but he stayed close. The snow continued to fall around them, and the temperature continued to drop. Without his blanket, Taman was colder than ever. His teeth started to chatter and his whole body began to shake. But he did not take the blanket back. The creature's breathing grew slower and more ragged. Its glowing skin began to dim. Taman watched helplessly, wishing there was something more he could do. He had no phone to call for help, no money to buy medicine, no way to save this dying being. All he could offer was a thin blanket and his presence. Hours passed. Taman's body grew numb from the cold, but he refused to leave. He had made a promise to himself when his mother died. He had promised that he would never let anyone die alone if he could help it. It did not matter that this was not a human. It did not matter that no one would ever know what he did tonight. What mattered was that someone was suffering and he was there. Just before dawn, the creature took its last breath. The glow faded completely from its skin. The golden eyes closed for the final time. Taman sat there for a few more minutes, making sure it was really over. Then slowly he stood up on shaky legs. He looked down at the dead alien and the blanket covering it. Part of him wanted to take the blanket back. He would need it to survive. But something stopped him. This creature had died far from home, alone on a strange planet. The least he could do was let it keep the only comfort he had been able to provide. Taman turned and walked away from the alley. The sun was starting to rise, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange. He was freezing, exhausted, and hungry. He had no idea where his next meal would come from or where he would sleep that night, but he had done the right thing. Somehow that made him feel a little warmer inside. He had no way of knowing that his simple act of kindness would change everything. He had no idea that 200 warships were already on their way to Earth. He could not possibly know that by tomorrow. His entire world would be turned upside down. All he knew was that he had helped someone who needed it. And for Taman, that was enough. Taman woke up to the sound of screaming. He had managed to find a new spot to sleep in an abandoned building a few blocks away from the alley. The building had once been an office, but it had been empty for years. Broken windows let in the cold air, but at least there was a roof. Taman had curled up in a corner on the 3rd floor and fallen into an exhausted sleep. Now he was awake, and the screaming was getting louder. He scrambled to his feet and ran to the window. What he saw made his blood turn cold. The sky was full of ships. They were not airplanes or helicopters. These were massive vessels that looked like nothing Taman had ever seen before. They were sleek and silver, with strange lights glowing along their sides. Some were as small as buses, while others were as large as entire city blocks. They hovered in the air without making any sound, which somehow made them even more terrifying. People were running through the streets below, screaming and crying. Cars crashed into each other as drivers looked up at the sky instead of watching the road. Sirens wailed in the distance. Taman could see police cars and military vehicles rushing toward the city center. His heart was pounding so hard he thought it might burst out of his chest. Were these aliens? Were they here to invade? Were they going to destroy the city? Then he remembered the creature from last night. The dying being with the silver skin and golden eyes. Could these ships be connected to that? The thought made him feel sick with fear. One of the largest ships was descending slowly toward a plaza about half a mile away. Taman could see crowds of people running away from it. Military vehicles were forming a circle around the plaza, and soldiers were pointing their weapons at the sky. Taman knew he should hide. He should go down to the basement and stay there until this was all over. But something made him stay at the window. He had to see what happened next. The large ship landed in the plaza with a gentle touch, as if something that big and heavy weighed nothing at all. For a long moment, nothing happened. The soldiers kept their weapons aimed at the ship. The crowds of people watched from a distance. News helicopters circled overhead, filming everything. Then a door opened in the side of the ship. A ramp extended down to the ground, and figures began to emerge. Even from this distance, Taman could see they were like the creature from last night. Tall with glowing silver skin, but these beings were not dying. They moved with purpose and strength. They wore armor that seemed to shimmer in the morning light, and they carried weapons that looked both beautiful and deadly. The first one to reach the bottom of the ramp was clearly the leader. Taemin could tell by the way the others followed behind. This one was female, he thought, though it was hard to be sure. She was tall and powerful looking, with markings on her face that seemed more pronounced than the others. Scars crossed her arms and neck, telling stories of old battles. She raised one hand and all the other aliens stopped moving. Then she did something that surprised everyone watching. She spoke and her voice boomed across the plaza. It was not in Korean or any human language, but somehow Taemin could understand it. He realized there must be some kind of translation happening, maybe through speakers on the ship. "We are the Talmora," the female leader said. Her voice was strong and clear. "We come in peace, but we will not be denied. We are searching for someone, a human child. We mean no harm to your people, but we will find this child. Stand aside." The military commander on the ground shouted something through a megaphone. Taemin could not hear the words, but he could guess what they were. Something like, "Leave Earth or we will open fire." The alien leader, whose name Taemin would later learn was Haiwan, tilted her head slightly. She seemed more sad than angry. Then she raised her hand again and a beam of light shot from her palm into the air. It spread out like a dome over the entire plaza, covering the soldiers and their vehicles. The soldiers fired their weapons. Bullets and missiles flew toward the aliens. But when the projectiles hit the dome of light, they simply stopped in midair and fell harmlessly to the ground. Not a single shot reached the aliens. Haewon waited until the soldiers had emptied their weapons. Then she spoke again. "We do not wish to fight you," she said. "We are here for one purpose only. We are searching for the human child who showed compassion to our prince in his final moments. This child has earned the highest honor of our people. We have come to repay a debt." Taemin's hands gripped the windowsill so hard his knuckles turned white. They were looking for him. These aliens, these warriors, were searching for him because of what he had done last night. He should have felt honored. He should have felt special. Instead, he felt absolutely terrified. More aliens were emerging from the other ships now. Taemin counted at least 50 in the plaza, and he could see more landing in other parts of the city. How many were there? Hundreds, maybe thousands? Devices appeared in the hands of several aliens. They looked like tablets made of light. The aliens began scanning the area, moving through the streets in organized groups. They were efficient and methodical, like soldiers on a mission. The military tried to stop them, but it was useless. Whenever soldiers got in the way, the aliens simply walked through walls or jumped over vehicles with incredible strength. They did not hurt anyone, but they also did not let anyone stop them. Taemin watched as one group of aliens moved down the street toward his building. His whole body was shaking now. Part of him wanted to run, but where would he go? These beings had ships that could travel between stars. They could probably find him anywhere on Earth. The scanning devices were getting closer. One group of aliens entered the building below him. Taemin could hear their footsteps on the stairs moving up floor by floor. He backed away from the window and pressed himself against the wall. His mind was racing. What did they want with him? Would they hurt him? Would they take him away? Would they punish him for touching their prince? The footsteps reached his floor. Taemin held his breath. 3 aliens came into the room. 2 males and 1 female, all wearing armor and carrying weapons. The one in front, a stern-looking male, held up his scanning device. It made a high-pitched beeping sound, and then a light swept across the room until it focused on Taemin. The alien's golden eyes widened slightly. He said something in his own language to the others, and they immediately lowered their weapons. Then he tapped a device on his wrist and spoke again. "Commander Haewon," he said. "We have found the child. Sending coordinates now." Taemin tried to speak, but no words came out. The alien who had spoken stepped forward slowly, as if approaching a frightened animal. When he was a few feet away, he did something Taemin never expected. He knelt down. All 3 aliens knelt on the dirty floor of the abandoned building, their heads bowed. Taemin stared at them in complete confusion. These were warriors with advanced technology and powerful weapons. Why were they kneeling to a homeless boy? The kneeling alien spoke, and the translation came through clearly. "We are honored to find you," he said softly. "Please forgive our intrusion. Commander Haewon is coming. She will explain everything." Before Taemin could respond, he heard more footsteps on the stairs. These were heavier, more purposeful. A figure appeared in the doorway, and Taemin recognized the female leader from the plaza. Commander Haewon was even more impressive up close. She stood at least 7 feet tall, with muscles that rippled beneath her silver skin. The scars on her body were like badges of honor. Her golden eyes studied Taemin with an intensity that made him want to look away, but he found he could not. Then, to his absolute shock, Commander Haewon also knelt. She placed one fist over her heart and bowed her head. "Human child," she said, and her voice was filled with emotion. "I am Commander Haewon of the Talmora Third Fleet. We have traveled across the stars to find you. You showed compassion to Prince Jae-sung in his final moments. You gave him comfort when he was dying and alone. You sacrificed your only protection from the cold to ease his suffering. In our culture, such an act creates a debt of honor that can never be fully repaid." Taemin's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. A prince? That dying creature had been a prince? Haewon raised her head and looked directly at him. Tears were streaming down her face, glowing softly in the dim light. "Prince Jae-sung was the only son of our emperor," she continued. "He was beloved by all our people. His ship was ambushed by our enemies, and he crashed on your world. We searched for him, but we were too late. He died in that alley, far from home and family." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice shook. "But he did not die alone. He did not die in pain and fear. Because of you, he died with warmth and kindness. His neural implant recorded everything. We saw what you did. We saw you give him your only blanket. We saw you stay with him through the night, even though you were freezing. You asked for nothing. You expected nothing. You simply showed compassion to a dying stranger." Haewon stood up, and the other aliens followed. She took a step toward Taemin. "We have come to honor you," she said. "We have come to repay our debt. 200 of our finest warriors are here to serve you. Whatever you need, whatever you want, you need only ask. Your life of suffering is over. You will never be cold, never be hungry, never be alone again." Taemin finally found his voice. It came out as barely a whisper. "I don't understand," he said. "I just gave him—" Taemin sat in a chair that felt softer than anything he had ever touched. The room around him looked like something from a science fiction movie. Walls made of smooth metal glowed with soft blue light. Strange symbols floated in the air, changing and shifting like living things. Through a large window, he could see the city of Seoul spread out below. He was inside the alien ship. Commander Haewon sat across from him along with several other aliens. One of them, introduced as Captain Dongju, was the stern male who had found him in the building. Another was a female named Officer Yuna, who seemed to be some kind of medical specialist. They all watched him with expressions that mixed respect and curiosity. A small robot had brought him food and water. The water tasted pure and clean, better than anything he had found in the city. The food was strange but delicious, and for the first time in months his stomach was actually full. "You must have many questions," Haewon said gently. She had changed since finding him. The fierce warrior from the plaza now seemed almost motherly. "Please ask anything you wish." Taemin's mind was full of questions, but one kept coming back stronger than the others. "Why?" he asked. "Why does giving someone a blanket matter so much to you?" Haewon leaned back in her chair. Her golden eyes grew distant, as if she was looking at something far away. "Let me tell you about our people," she began. "The Talmora have existed for over 50,000 of your years. In that time, we have built a civilization that spans many star systems. We have technology you cannot imagine. We have wealth beyond measure. We have power that could destroy worlds." She paused, and her expression grew sad. "But we almost lost everything once. Long ago, our people were divided. We fought terrible wars against each other. Millions died. Our homeworld was nearly destroyed. We were on the edge of extinction." Captain Dongju spoke up, his voice deep and serious. "What saved us was not technology or weapons. It was a single act of compassion. A soldier from one side found an enemy soldier dying on the battlefield. Instead of walking away, he stayed with the dying soldier. He shared his water. He held the soldier's hand as he died. That simple act reminded both sides that we were all the same people. It ended the war." Officer Yuna added, "Since that day, compassion toward the suffering has been the highest value in our society. We teach our children that true strength is not in weapons or power. True strength is in the ability to help someone who cannot help you in return. True strength is in choosing kindness when it costs you something," Haewon continued. "When someone shows such compassion, especially at great personal cost, it creates what we call Talmora Kan, a debt of honor. This debt is sacred. It must be repaid. To ignore it would be to dishonor everything our people believe in." Taemin shook his head. "But I'm nobody. I'm just a homeless kid. I don't deserve all this. That is exactly why you do deserve it, HFY said firmly. You had nothing. You were cold and hungry and alone, yet when you saw someone suffering, you gave away the one thing that kept you alive. You did not know he was a prince. You did not know there would be any reward. You helped him because it was the right thing to do. She stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city. Prince Jae-sung was the emperor's only child. He was intelligent, kind, and beloved by all our people. His death has broken the emperor's heart. But knowing that his son's final moments were filled with kindness instead of pain has brought comfort to the emperor and empress. For that alone, we owe you everything. Captain Dongju activated a holographic display in the center of the room. Images appeared, showing the prince before his death. Taemin saw a young alien with silver skin unmarked by scars. He was smiling in most of the images, surrounded by others who clearly loved him. This is who you helped, Dongju said quietly. Jae-sung was only 18 cycles old. That is about 20 of your years. He was on a diplomatic mission when his ship was attacked. He managed to activate the emergency escape, but he was badly injured. His ship crashed in your city, and he crawled to that alley to hide from his enemies. The hologram showed the crash site, then the alley where Taemin had found him. Then it showed something that made Taemin's throat tighten. It was a recording from the prince's point of view. He could see himself approaching, looking scared but determined. He watched himself place the blanket over the dying prince. The recording continued, showing the long night. Taemin had not realized it at the time, but the prince had been watching him the entire time. Even as he was dying, Jae-sung had studied the small human boy who sat beside him, shivering in the cold but refusing to leave. At one point in the recording, the prince had tried to reach out and touch Taemin's hand, perhaps to thank him or comfort him. But he had been too weak. His hand had fallen back to his side. Taemin saw tears in the prince's golden eyes. The recording ended with the prince taking his last breath. The final image was of Taemin's face, watching over him with sad but gentle eyes. Taemin realized he was crying. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm sorry I couldn't save him." HFY turned from the window, her own eyes wet with tears. "You did save him. Not his body, but something more important. You saved him from dying alone and afraid. You gave him the most precious gift any being can give another. You gave him compassion." She returned to her seat and looked at Taemin seriously. "Now we must discuss what happens next. As I said before, we are here to repay our debt. In our culture, you have the right to ask for anything within our power to grant. Wealth, technology, a home on our world, protection, anything. What do you want?" Taemin thought about this. It was the most important question anyone had ever asked him. What did he want? A part of him wanted to ask for food and a warm place to sleep. That would be the smart thing to do. But as he looked at the faces of the aliens around him, he saw their grief. These warriors had crossed the stars to honor their fallen prince. They were in pain, just like he had been in pain when his mother died. He thought about the other children on the streets, kids like him who were cold and hungry and alone. He thought about the old man who sometimes shared his spot under the bridge. He thought about the young mother with a baby who begged for money outside the convenience store. "I have a question first," Taemin said slowly. "If I ask for something for myself, does that end your debt? Or could I ask for something for other people too?" The aliens exchanged glances. Captain Dongju raised an eyebrow. "That is an unusual question. Most beings would immediately ask for personal gain. The debt is to you," HFY explained. "You may ask for anything, whether it benefits you personally or not. The debt remains until we have fulfilled your request to the best of our ability." Taemin took a deep breath. He knew what he wanted now. "I want you to help the other people like me," he said. "The homeless people, the hungry people, the people who have nowhere to go and no one to help them. I want you to build places where they can be warm and safe, where they can get food and medical care, where they don't have to be afraid anymore." The room went completely silent. The aliens stared at him with expressions of shock. Captain Dongju was the first to speak. "Child, do you understand what you are refusing? We could make you wealthy beyond imagination. We could give you a palace. We could extend your life for centuries. We could grant you power and influence. And you choose to ask for nothing for yourself?" "It's not nothing," Taemin said quietly. "If you help them, you're helping me too. 'Cause I know what it's like. I know how it feels to be so cold you can't sleep, to be so hungry your stomach hurts all the time, to have everyone look at you like you're garbage. If you can stop other people from feeling that way, that would make me happier than any amount of money." Heywan stood up abruptly. Her face was unreadable. Taemin worried that he had said something wrong, that maybe he had insulted them somehow. Then Heywan did something unexpected. She laughed. It was a warm, joyful sound that filled the room. "Captain Dongju," she said, still smiling. "Do you remember what I said when we first saw the recording? I said we should verify that this human child truly possessed such a pure heart, or if it was simply a moment of weakness. I said we should test him before making any grand promises." Dongju nodded slowly. "I remember, Commander." Heywan turned to Taemin and her eyes were shining with something like pride. "You have answered my doubts completely. Only someone with a truly compassionate soul would refuse personal gain to help others. Prince Jaesung recognized your heart when he saw you. That is why his final thoughts, recorded in his neural implant, were of gratitude and hope. He hoped that if beings like you existed among humanity, then perhaps your species was worth knowing." She placed a hand over her heart and bowed deeply. "Your request will be granted, Taemin. We will help your people. We will build shelters and provide food and medical care. We will do this in Prince Jaesung's name, as a monument to the compassion you showed him." Officer Yuna smiled. "The Emperor will be pleased. This is a worthy use of our resources." Captain Dongju, however, still looked concerned. "Commander, we should inform the child of the complications. The human governments will not simply allow us to do as we please. There will be resistance, perhaps even violence." Heywan nodded. "That is true. Taemin, you should know that fulfilling your request will not be simple." She turned to the others. "Captain Dongju, begin preparations for the humanitarian operation. Officer Yuna, continue monitoring Taemin's health. Vice Commander Kyung-soo, contact the diplomatic team. We need to establish communication with Earth's governments." "What about me?" Taemin asked. "What should I do?" Heywan smiled. "For now, rest. Eat, recover your strength. Tomorrow the real work begins. We will need to survey the areas with the most need, design shelters that respect human culture, and establish protocols for food and medical distribution. Your knowledge of this city and its people will be invaluable." As the others filed out of the medical bay, Captain Dongju paused at the door. He looked back at Taemin with something like respect. "I questioned." She turned to the others. "Captain Dongju, begin preparations for the humanitarian operation. Officer Yuna, continue monitoring Taemin's health. Vice Commander Kyung-soo, contact the diplomatic team. We need to establish communication with Earth's governments." "What about me?" Taemin asked. "What should I do?" Heywan smiled. "For now, rest. Eat, recover your strength. Tomorrow the real work begins. We will need to survey the areas with the most need, design shelters that respect human culture, and establish protocols for food and medical distribution. Your knowledge of this city and its people will be invaluable." As the others filed out of the medical bay, Captain Dongju paused at the door. He looked back at Taemin with something like respect. "I questioned." The medical room was unlike anything Taemin could have imagined. Soft lights moved across his body and he felt warmth spreading through his limbs for the first time in years. Officer Yuna stood nearby, monitoring the displays that showed his vital signs. "You are severely malnourished," she said gently. "Your body has been surviving on minimal nutrition for a long time. We are correcting the deficiencies now. You will feel much better soon." Taemin watched the strange lights with wonder. "Does it hurt?" "Not at all. You might feel tingling, but no pain." Yuna smiled at him. "Tell me, how long have you been living on the streets?" "Almost 2 years," Taemin answered. "Since my mother died." Yuna's expression grew sad. "I'm sorry for your loss. Among my people, family bonds are sacred. To lose a parent so young must have been very difficult." "She was sick for a long time before," Taemin said quietly. "I knew it was coming. But knowing doesn't make it easier." The medical scan completed and Yuna helped him sit up. She handed him a set of clean clothes, soft and warm like nothing he had ever worn. "These are for you. Your old clothes have been disposed of." Taemin changed quickly, still not quite believing this was real. The clothes fit perfectly and adjusted to his body temperature automatically. When he looked at himself in the mirror, he barely recognized the boy staring back. Clean face, clean hair, healthy color in his cheeks. He looked almost normal. Commander Heywan entered the medical bay, followed by Captain Dongju and another male alien Taemin had not met before. This one looked older, with more scars and markings on his skin. His golden eyes studied Taemin with an expression that seemed skeptical. "Taemin," Heywan said, This is Vice Commander Kyung-soo. He serves as my second-in-command and advisor. He has concerns about your request that I believe you should hear. Kyung-soo stepped forward. His voice was formal and cautious. Young human, I mean no disrespect. But I must ensure you understand what you have refused. Commander Haewon has offered you 3 choices, though you have only heard one request. I ask that you consider the other options before we proceed. He activated a holographic display. Images appeared in the air, showing beautiful cities with towers that reached toward the sky. First option, wealth. We can provide you with enough resources to live in luxury for your entire life. You would never want for anything. You could have the finest education, travel anywhere, experience everything your world has to offer. The images changed, showing a planet with purple skies and silver oceans. Strange but beautiful creatures moved through crystal forests. Second option, a home on our world. You would be welcomed as an honored guest. You would have access to technology and knowledge far beyond what Earth possesses. Your lifespan could be extended. You could live for centuries and see wonders you cannot imagine. The final image showed Taemin surrounded by armored aliens. Third option, permanent protection. A contingent of our finest warriors would be assigned to guard you for life. You would be safe from any harm. No one would dare threaten you. You would have power and influence simply through your connection to us. Kyung-soo dismissed the hologram and looked at Taemin seriously. These are not small offerings, child. Any of these choices would transform your life completely. Yet you have asked for none of them. You have asked only that we help others. I must question whether you truly understand what you're giving up. Taemin felt small under the vice commander's gaze. He wondered if he had made a mistake. Everything Kyung-soo described sounded amazing. A part of him wanted to change his mind, to ask for the wealth or the new home or the protection. But then he remembered something. When his mother was dying, a rich man had come to the hospital. He had been there visiting someone else, but he passed by their room. He had looked at Taemin's mother lying in the bed, looked at young Taemin sitting beside her, and then walked away without a word. That man could have helped. He could have paid for better medicine or a private room, but he had not cared enough to even stop. Taemin looked up at Kyung-soo. I understand what you're offering, and I'm grateful, but I've been cold and hungry and scared for 2 years. I know what that feels like. And I know there are hundreds of other people in this city who feel the same way every day. He took a deep breath, trying to find the right words. If I take your gifts for myself, I might be happy. But I would also know that I could have helped others and chose not to. I would be just like that rich man who walked past my mother's room. I don't want to be that person. The room was quiet for a long moment. Then Commander Haewon placed a hand on Kyung-soo's shoulder. Does that answer your concerns, Vice Commander? Kyung-soo studied Taemin for a long time. Then slowly he bowed his head. It does, Commander. I apologize for doubting. This child has a strength of character I have rarely seen, even among our own people. Haewon smiled. Taemin, we will honor your request. But there is something you must understand. By asking us to help your people, you are making yourself responsible for how we interact with your world. You will need to be present for important decisions. You will need to speak for the humans who cannot speak for themselves. Are you prepared for that responsibility? Taemin's eyes widened. You want me to be in charge? Not in charge, Captain Dongju clarified. But you would be a liaison, a bridge between our people and yours. We would need your guidance to understand human needs and customs. Without your input, we might make mistakes that harm rather than help. This was more than Taemin had expected. He had thought they would just build some shelters and leave. He had not realized they would need him to stay involved. What if I make mistakes? He asked quietly. What if I say something wrong and people get hurt? Officer Yuna knelt beside him. Then we would fix the mistake together. Leadership is not about being perfect, Taemin. It is about caring enough to try, and being brave enough to admit when you are wrong. You have already shown both qualities. But I'm just a kid. I don't know anything about politics or diplomacy or any of that stuff. Haewon laughed softly. Neither did I when I first became a commander. I was a simple soldier who suddenly found herself responsible for thousands of lives. I made many mistakes, but I learned, and those I led were patient with me as I grew into my role. She knelt down as well, looking Taemin in the eye. I will be honest with you. This will not be easy. Your world's governments fear us. Some will see our help as an invasion. There may be conflicts. There may be danger. If you accept this responsibility, Your life will become complicated in ways you cannot yet imagine. However, she continued, you will also have the chance to help more people than you ever dreamed possible. You will be able to ensure that no child has to sleep in the cold as you did. You will be able to give others the chance at life that you are being given now. Is that not worth the difficulty? Taman thought about the old man under the bridge. He thought about the young mother with the baby. He thought about all the faces he had seen during his time on the streets. Faces full of pain and hopelessness and quiet desperation. Yes, he said firmly. It's worth it. Kyung-soo spoke again, his voice softer than before. I must ask one more question, child. Why do you care so much about strangers? Most beings focus on their own survival. It is natural. It is logical. Yet you consistently choose to help others at cost to yourself. Why? Taman looked down at his hands. They were clean now, but he could still remember how they looked after 2 years on the streets. Dirty, scarred, always cold. My mother used to say something, he said quietly. She would say that we're all connected. That helping someone else is really helping yourself, because we're all part of the same world. I didn't really understand what she meant when I was little. He looked up at the aliens around him. But I understand now. When I gave that blanket to the prince, I wasn't thinking about rewards or honor or any of that. I just thought about how scared and alone he must have felt. I thought about how I would want someone to help me if I was dying in an alley far from home. His voice grew stronger. And that's why I want to help the homeless people now. Because I was them, I am them. If I let them suffer when I have the power to help, then I'm saying that my life matters more than theirs. And that's not true. Every person's life matters. Every person deserves kindness. The room fell silent again. This time, even Kyung-soo's eyes were shining with unshed tears. Commander Haiwan stood up and placed a hand over her heart. In all my years of service, I have never heard a clearer expression of the Talmorakan principle. You honor our highest values without even knowing our teachings. It is as if the universe itself chose you for this moment. I questioned. 3 days had passed since the aliens arrived and Seoul was transforming. Taemin stood on the rooftop of one of the new structures, watching the construction process with amazement. The Talmora worked with incredible speed and precision. What would have taken human workers months to build, they completed in hours. The shelters rose from empty lots like flowers blooming in time-lapse photography. But these were not ordinary shelters. Each building was beautiful, with smooth walls that seemed to glow with inner light. The roofs were covered with panels that collected solar energy. Inside, rooms were divided by walls that could be moved or removed, allowing families to have privacy or groups to gather together. Most impressive was the technology. The temperature inside each shelter adjusted automatically to keep everyone comfortable. Water was purified and recycled. Machines that looked like silver boxes produced food by rearranging molecules, creating fresh meals from raw materials. Medical stations could diagnose and treat most common illnesses. Commander Hae-won appeared beside Taemin, her footsteps so quiet he had not heard her approach. What do you think? She asked. It's incredible, Taemin said honestly. But I'm worried. About what? The people. The homeless people I know, they're not used to all this. They might be scared, or they might not trust it. How do we get them to actually use these shelters? Hae-won nodded thoughtfully. This is why we need you. We can build structures, but we cannot build trust. That must come from humans helping other humans. Do you have a suggestion? Taemin thought for a moment. I need to go talk to them myself. If they see that I'm okay, that the aliens didn't hurt me, maybe they'll be willing to try. That could be dangerous, Captain Dongju said, joining them on the rooftop. There are those who fear and hate us. They might take their anger out on you. I know, Taemin said. But it's important. These people need to know that someone like them trusts you. Not a politician or a soldier, but someone who's lived on the streets like they have. Hae-won considered this. Very well, but you will not go alone. Officer Sang-hoon will accompany you. He has training in civilian protection and diplomacy. Officer Sang-hoon stepped forward. He was younger than most of the other aliens, with fewer scars and a gentler demeanor. His golden eyes held warmth rather than the fierce intensity of the warriors. I would be honored to assist, he said with a slight bow. That afternoon, Taemin and Sang-hoon walked through the streets of the district where Taemin had lived for 2 years. Humans stopped and stared at them. Some pointed and whispered. Others ran away. A few shouted angry words. But Taemin kept walking and Sang-hoon followed quietly behind. They made their way to an area under a bridge where several homeless people usually gathered. As they approached, Taemin saw familiar faces. There was Old Man Sung, who always shared whatever food he found. There was Mrs. Choi, who had 3 children and tried to keep them safe. And there was Bora, a girl about Taemin's age who had been living on the streets even longer than he had. Bora saw him first. Her eyes went wide. "Taemin? Is that really you?" The others turned to look. Old Man Sung stood up slowly, his expression confused. "Boy, what happened to you? You look different." Taemin realized how he must appear to them. Clean clothes, healthy color, no longer shaking from cold or hunger. He probably looked like a different person. "It's me," he said. "I'm still me. But something happened. Something amazing. And I want to tell you about it." He sat down on the ground with them and Sang-hoon stood a respectful distance away. Then Taemin told them everything. About finding the dying alien. About giving him his blanket. About the warriors coming to find him. About his request to help people like them. As he talked, more homeless people gathered around. They listened in silence, their faces showing a mixture of hope and disbelief. When he finished, Old Man Sung shook his head. "This sounds like a fairy tale. Aliens don't just give away free housing and food." "It's not free," Taemin explained. "It's payment for a debt they believe they owe. And they're not just giving things away randomly. They want to actually help. To make sure no one has to live like this anymore." "Why should we trust them?" Mrs. Choi asked, holding her youngest child close. "How do we know this isn't some kind of trick?" Taemin looked at Sang-hoon, who stepped forward slowly. The homeless people tensed and some reached for makeshift weapons. But Sang-hoon simply knelt down, making himself less threatening. "I understand your fear," Sang-hoon said, his voice gentle. "You have been hurt by your own kind many times. You have learned not to trust. That is wise. But I ask only that you see what we have built. Walk through the shelters. Test the food and water. Talk to the medical officers. If you still wish to leave after seeing everything, you may do so freely. We will not force anyone to accept our help." Bora spoke up, her voice sharp. "And what do you want in return?" "Nothing's free in this world." "You are correct," Sang-hoon said. "We want something in return. We want to honor our fallen prince by helping those who suffer as he suffered in his final moments. We want to prove to ourselves and to Taemin that his death had meaning." "Is that price too high for you to pay?" The question hung in the air. Finally, Old Man Sung sighed. "I'll go look. But if this is some kind of trap, I'm going to be very angry." "That is fair," Sang-hoon said with a slight smile. Over the next few hours, Taemin and Sang-hoon guided groups of homeless people to the nearest shelter. The reactions were almost always the same, suspicion turning to wonder, then to tears of relief. Mrs. Choi cried when she saw the family rooms with actual beds. Old Man Sung stood speechless in front of the food synthesizer, watching it create a hot meal. Bora tested everything with scientific precision, looking for catches or tricks and found none. By evening, the first shelter was nearly full. More people kept arriving, some from across the city drawn by rumors spreading through the homeless community. The Talmora workers adapted quickly, creating more space and ensuring everyone had what they needed. Taemin found Bora sitting in one of the common areas, staring at a plate of food like she could not believe it was real. "You actually did it," she said softly. "You really got them to help us." Taemin sat beside her. "I just asked. They did the rest." Bora looked at him seriously. "What happens when they leave? What happens when they decide we're not worth the effort anymore?" It was a question Taemin had been avoiding thinking about. "I don't know," he admitted. "But Commander Haewon says they're committed to this, that their honor demands they see it through." "Honor." Bora said the word like it was foreign. "I didn't think honor existed anymore." "Maybe it does," Taemin said. "Just not where we were looking." The next morning, Taemin woke in his quarters on the alien ship. It was still strange to sleep in such comfort, to wake up warm and rested. He got dressed and headed to the command center, where Haewon and her officers were monitoring the situation. "We have a problem," Captain Dongju announced as Taemin entered. "The human military has established a perimeter around the district. They are not allowing anyone to enter or leave." "Why?" Taemin asked, alarmed. Haewon pulled up a holographic display showing news reports. Human reporters were saying all sorts of things about the aliens. Some called them invaders. Others said they were conducting experiments. A few accused them of kidnapping homeless people. The governments are afraid of us, Haywan explained. They see us helping their most vulnerable citizens and they worry about what it means for their authority. If we can solve their problems better than they can, what does that say about their leadership? Vice Commander Kyung-soo looked frustrated. We could easily bypass their blockade. Their weapons cannot stop us. No, Taemin said immediately. If you use force, even just to get past them, it will make everything worse. People will think you really are invaders. Then what do you suggest? Kyung-soo asked. Taemin thought hard. Can you contact their leaders? Can you invite them to see what you're doing? Maybe if they actually visit the shelters and talk to the people, they'll understand. Officer Sang-hoon nodded. A reasonable approach. We have been trying to establish official communication, but they have been slow to respond. Perhaps a more direct invitation would work. Haewon made a decision. Sang-hoon, prepare a formal diplomatic message. Invite their leaders to tour the facilities. Make it clear we have nothing to hide. Dongju, maintain our peaceful posture but be ready for any aggressive action. Taemin, you should rest. You may need to speak to their leaders yourself. But Taemin was not listening. He was staring at one of the displays showing the blockade. Something had caught his attention. Can you zoom in on that? He asked, pointing. Dongju enhanced the image. It showed a military officer standing at the blockade, watching the shelter with an expression that was not fear or anger. It was calculation. There was something cold and hungry in his eyes as he looked at the alien technology. That man, Taemin said slowly. He's not afraid of you. He wants something from you. Haewon studied the image carefully. You are perceptive. That is General Il-sung. Our intelligence suggests he is not acting on official orders. He has positioned his troops without full authorization from his government. What does he want? Taemin asked. What such men always want, Kyung-soo said darkly. Power. Your technology would make whoever controls it the most powerful human on Earth. I suspect Gar. The attack came at midnight. Taemin was asleep in his quarters when the alarms woke him. The soft glow of the room's walls turned red, and a voice spoke in both Talmora and Korean. Security alert. All personnel to defensive positions. He scrambled out of bed and ran to the command center. Haewon was already there, along with most of her officers. Holographic displays showed multiple angles of the shelter below. Armed figures in black uniforms were moving through the streets surrounding the building. How many? Haewon demanded. Approximately 60 human soldiers, Captain Dongju reported. They are using suppressed weapons and moving in coordinated teams. Professional military tactics. It's General Il-sung, Vice Commander Kyung-soo said. He's making his move. Taemin felt his heart sink. They had found evidence of the general's plans, but not quickly enough. They had sent messages to the Korean government, but apparently those warnings had not reached the right people in time. We need to stop them, Taemin said urgently, but without hurting anyone. If people die, even bad people, it will turn everyone against you. Haewon nodded grimly. Agreed. But defending ourselves without causing harm will be difficult. These soldiers are heavily armed. On the displays, Taemin could see the attackers moving closer to the shelter. Some were planting devices on the walls. Others were taking up positions around the entrances. It was clearly a planned operation. Then he saw something that made his blood run cold. Bora and several other homeless people, including Mrs. Choi and her children, were walking back to the shelter from a late evening outing. They were laughing and talking, completely unaware of the danger. They were walking right into the middle of the attack zone. We have to warn them, Taemin shouted. Officer Sang-hoon was already moving. I'm going down there. Take a team, Haewon ordered. Protect the civilians. Use non-lethal measures only unless you have no other choice. Sang-hoon and 5 other Talmora warriors rushed to the transport platform and disappeared in a flash of light. On the displays, Taemin watched them materialize near the shelter entrance, just as the first shots rang out. The soldiers had seen Bora's group and opened fire. But the Talmora warriors were faster. Shields of shimmering energy appeared in front of the civilians, deflecting the bullets. Sang-hoon scooped up Mrs. Choi's youngest child and dove behind a barrier, while the other warriors moved to protect the rest of the group. Return fire. Non-lethal. Sang-hoon's voice came through the communication system. The Talmora warriors raised their weapons. Blue bolts of energy shot out, hitting the soldiers. But instead of killing them, the energy simply made them fall unconscious. Within seconds, a dozen soldiers were down, but there were more, many more. They kept coming from multiple directions. and some were specifically targeting the alien warriors with heavier weapons. The devices they planted are explosives, Captain Dongju reported, designed to breach our structures. If they detonate, people inside could be hurt. Can we disarm them? Heywan asked. Not quickly enough. They're on remote detonators. Taemin watched the chaos unfold, feeling helpless. On one display, he saw Sang-hoon shielding Bora and Mrs. Choi with his own body, as bullets struck his armor. On another, he saw more soldiers entering the building through a side entrance. On a third, he saw General Il-sung himself, standing in a command vehicle blocks away, watching everything with satisfaction. He wants you to fight back, Taemin said suddenly. He wants you to kill his soldiers. That's the whole point. If you kill them, he can show the world that aliens are murderers. Then he'll be a hero and everyone will support giving him whatever he wants to protect Earth. Heywan's eyes narrowed. You are correct. This is a trap, but we cannot simply allow his people to kill ours. Then we need to change the game, Taemin said. His mind was racing, trying to think of something, anything that could stop this without bloodshed. Can you broadcast? Can you show everyone what's really happening? Officer Yuna looked up from her console. We can tap into all electronic communications in the area. We could hijack television signals, internet, everything. Do it, Heywan decided. Show the world what is happening. Show them who attacked first. Within seconds, every screen in Seoul showed the same image. The attack on the shelter from multiple angles. The displays clearly showed the soldiers in their unmarked uniforms, firing first, planting explosives, targeting civilians. They showed the Talmora warriors defending without killing, protecting homeless people with their own bodies. And most damning of all, they showed General Il-sung in his command vehicle, giving orders through a radio. The general's face went pale when he realized what was happening. He grabbed his radio. Abort! All units abort and fall back. But it was too late. The video was already spreading across the internet. News stations were picking it up. Government officials were being woken with emergency calls. However, the general's soldiers had not received the abort order in time. Some were still fighting, still trying to complete their mission, and some had already activated the explosives. Detonation in 10 seconds, Captain Dongju reported. Multiple charges throughout the building. Taemin saw Sang-hoon on the display, still inside the building with Bora and the others. They would not make it out in time. Evacuate them, he screamed. Not enough time, Heywan said, her voice strained. But there is another way. She touched controls on her console. All ships, focus shield generators on the target building. Maximum power. On the displays, Taemin saw beams of light shoot down from the alien ships hovering above. The beams converged on the shelter just as the explosives detonated. The building shook violently. Windows shattered. But the walls held. The alien shielding absorbed most of the blast, containing it and preventing the structure from collapsing. Inside, people were thrown to the ground, but the ceiling did not cave in on them. Sang-hoon's voice came through, shaky but alive. We're okay. Some injuries, but everyone's alive. Proceeding with evacuation now. Taemin nearly collapsed with relief. Heywan placed a steadying hand on his shoulder. Well done, she said softly. Your idea to expose the truth may have saved many lives on both sides. But the night was not over yet. On the displays, Taemin saw Korean military forces arriving. Real ones this time, not the general's private troops. They were surrounding both the general's command vehicle and the shelter. A message came through to the alien ship. It was from someone identified as Defense Minister Park. This is the Korean government. We are taking General Il-sung into custody for unauthorized military action. We apologize for this incident. Please hold your position while we secure the area. Heywan responded calmly. Understood. We will cooperate fully. But be aware that we have civilians in need of medical attention. We are sending our medical teams to assist them now. Permission granted, Minister Park replied. And thank you for your restraint. Many of my colleagues feared you would retaliate with overwhelming force. We came to help, not to wage war, Heywan said. We hope your people will remember that. Over the next hour, the area was secured. The unconscious soldiers were taken into custody. General Il-sung was arrested, protesting loudly that he had been trying to protect his country. But the evidence was overwhelming. His own communications had been recorded, clearly showing he had ordered the attack without authorization. Taemin went down to the shelter with Officer Yuna to check on the injured. He found Bora sitting on a medical bed, a bandage on her arm but otherwise unharmed. When she saw him, she tried to smile, but her hands were shaking. "I thought we were going to die," she said quietly. "Those soldiers, they just started shooting. They didn't care that we were just walking home." Taman sat beside her. "I know, I'm sorry. This is my fault. If I hadn't asked the Talmora to help, none of this would have happened." Bora looked at him like he was crazy. "Are you kidding? If you hadn't asked them to help, I'd still be sleeping under a bridge. I'd rather deal with one crazy general than go back to that life." "She is correct," Sang-hoon said, approaching them. His armor was scorched and dented from the bullets it had absorbed. "You are not responsible for evil acts committed by evil people. You are only responsible for trying to do good, which you have done." Mrs. Choi came over carrying her youngest child. "Officer Sang-hoon saved us," she said, her voice full of emotion. "When that shooting started, he covered my baby with his own body. He could have been killed, but he protected a human child he'd never met before." Sang-hoon looked uncomfortable with the praise. "It was my duty. Besides, Taman taught us that protecting those who cannot protect themselves is the highest virtue." Old man Sung appeared, leaning on a cane. He had been knocked down in the chaos but was not seriously hurt. He looked at Taman for a long moment, then said, "I was wrong to doubt. Your alien friends are good people. Strange, but good." Throughout the night, more people came to Taman with similar stories. Stories of Talmora warriors who had put themselves in danger to protect humans. Stories of quick thinking and compassion in the midst of battle. Stories that would spread far beyond the shelter, changing how people thought about the aliens. As dawn broke, Taemin stood on the roof of the shelter with Haiwan. The building was damaged but still standing. Korean soldiers were still present, but now they were helping with repairs rather than... 5 days after the attack, a ship arrived that made all the others look small. Taemin stood with Commander Haiwan on the landing platform, watching as the enormous vessel descended from the clouds. It was easily 10 times larger than any ship he had seen before, with intricate patterns carved into its hull that glowed with soft golden light. Where the warrior ships had been built for function, this one was built for majesty. "The Emperor himself," Haiwan said quietly. "I did not expect this." She was dressed in full ceremonial armor, polished until it shone. The other Talmora warriors stood at attention in perfect rows. Taemin felt very small and very underdressed in his simple clothes. "Should I change?" he asked nervously. "No," Haiwan said. "The Emperor asked to see you as you are. He does not care about fancy clothing. He cares about the person inside." The ship landed with barely a whisper of sound. A ramp extended and figures emerged. First came more warriors, even more impressive than Haiwan's soldiers. Their armor was decorated with symbols that seemed to shift and change. They took positions on either side of the ramp. Then came the Emperor. Taeho was old. Taemin could see it in his movements, in the deeper color of his silver skin, in the way he leaned slightly on an elegant staff. But there was strength in him too, the kind that came from living a long time and surviving many hardships. His golden eyes held wisdom and sadness in equal measure. Beside him walked the Empress Minji. She was tall and graceful, with markings on her face that resembled tears. Her expression was composed, but Taemin could see the grief beneath it. This was a mother who had lost her only child. Haiwan and all the warriors dropped to one knee, their fists over their hearts. Taemin quickly did the same, not sure if it was the right thing, but wanting to show respect. "Rise, Emperor," Taeho said. His voice was gentle despite its power. "Commander Haiwan, you and your warriors have served with honor. The reports I have received speak of your restraint and wisdom in difficult circumstances." "Thank you, Your Majesty," Haiwan said, standing. "But the true honor belongs to the human child who started all of this." The Emperor's gaze shifted to Taemin, and suddenly the boy felt like he was being seen through, all the way to his soul. Those golden eyes seemed to understand everything about him in a single glance. "So," the Emperor said softly, "you are Taemin, the child who gave comfort to my son." Taemin tried to speak, but his throat was too tight. He nodded instead. Empress Minji stepped forward. She knelt down in front of Taemin, bringing herself to his eye level. Tears were flowing freely down her face now, glowing as they fell. "May I?" she asked, reaching out slowly. Taemin did not understand what she was asking, but he nodded. The Empress placed her hand gently on his head, then pulled him into an embrace. She held him carefully as if he were made of glass, and Taman could feel her whole body shaking with silent sobs. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for being with my son. Thank you for making sure he did not die alone in the dark. Thank you for giving him peace." Taman's own tears started falling. He thought of his mother, of how he had held her hand as she died. He thought of how grateful he had been that she did not have to face death alone. Now he understood why the Talmora valued what he had done so much. "I'm sorry I couldn't save him," Taman said, his voice breaking. "I'm sorry." The Empress pulled back and looked at him with fierce intensity. "You did save him. Not his body, but something more important. You saved him from fear. You saved him from loneliness. You gave him the greatest gift anyone can give. Do you understand?" Taman nodded, unable to speak. Emperor Teho helped his wife stand, then placed a hand on Taman's shoulder. "We have come a long way to meet you, young one. We have something to show you." The Emperor gestured, and one of his attendants brought forward a device. A hologram appeared in the air, showing Prince Jae-sung. But this was not the dying creature Taman had found in the alley. This was the prince alive and well, laughing with friends, studying in beautiful halls, training with warriors. "This is who my son was," the Emperor said. "Brilliant, kind, and beloved by all who knew him. He was learning to be a leader, learning to serve our people with wisdom and compassion." The hologram changed, showing the prince's ship being attacked, showing the crash, showing him crawling through the cold streets badly injured. Taman watched it all, his heart breaking for the young prince who had died so far from home. Then the hologram showed something new. It showed Taman approaching the alley. But this time Taman could hear what the prince was thinking. The neural recording had captured his thoughts. "So cold," the prince's voice said. "So dark, I'm dying. I am alone. I will never see home again. Never see mother and father. I am afraid." Then Taman appeared in the recording, and the prince's thoughts changed. "Someone comes. A small creature, a human child. He sees me. He does not run. Why does he not run? He looks frightened, but he comes closer. What is he doing? He is covering me with cloth. It is warm. He is giving me warmth, but he has so little. I can see he is cold too. Why would he do this? He is staying. He sits beside me. I am still dying, but I am not alone. The fear is less now. This small human, he does not know me, does not know if I am friend or enemy, yet he stays. Such kindness, such pure compassion. Perhaps there is hope for this universe after all if beings like this exist. I am not afraid anymore. I am grateful. I am at peace." The hologram faded. Taman was openly crying now, and he was not alone. Many of the Talmora warriors had tears on their faces. Even Commander Haewan was wiping her eyes. "Those were my son's final thoughts," Emperor Teho said, his own voice thick with emotion. "Because of you, he died at peace. Because of you, he died believing in the goodness that exists in the universe. Because of you, his parents can remember him dying with hope rather than fear. For this, we can never repay you adequately." The Emperor stepped back and addressed everyone present. "I have consulted with the Council of Elders. We have reviewed everything that has happened here. We have seen how Commander Haewan and her warriors have conducted themselves. We have seen how Taemin has used our offer of repayment not for personal gain, but to help others. We have seen humans defending our people and our people defending humans." He paused, and his next words seemed to echo across the landing platform. "Therefore, I am making a historic declaration. The Talmora will establish a permanent presence on Earth. We will share technology to help eliminate poverty, hunger, and preventable disease. We will offer our knowledge and assistance freely, asking nothing in return except that humanity strives to live by the same principles of compassion that Taemin has shown." There was a collective gasp from the assembled warriors. This was far more than anyone had expected. "However," the Emperor continued, "there is a condition. We will not simply give these gifts without ensuring they are used wisely. A council will be formed, consisting of both humans and Talmora. This council will oversee all technology transfers and humanitarian efforts. It will ensure that what we share is used to help, not to harm." He looked directly at Taemin. "And I wish for you, Taemin, to be part of this council, not as a figurehead but as a true voice. You understand both the needs of your people and the values of ours. You will help us work together." Taemin's eyes went wide. "Me, but I'm just a kid. I don't know anything about running a council or making important decisions." "You knew enough to give your blanket to a dying stranger," Empress Minji said gently. You knew enough to ask for help for others instead of yourself. You knew enough to prevent violence when war seemed inevitable. That is wisdom, child. True wisdom comes from the heart, not from books. The Emperor smiled. Of course you will have advisors. Commander Haywan has agreed to stay on Earth as the Talmora representative. You will work together. And there will be human leaders as well, people chosen for their compassion and integrity. But there's something else, the Emperor said, his expression becoming more serious. I wish to offer you a great honor. Among our people, when someone shows extraordinary compassion and wisdom, they can be adopted into the royal family. I would like to adopt you as my honorary son, to replace the child we lost. You would become a prince of the Talmora. The entire platform went silent. This was unprecedented. A human becoming part of the royal family? It was unthinkable, impossible, and yet the Emperor had just offered it. Taemin looked at the Emperor and Empress. He saw the hope in their eyes, the desperate wish to fill the hole left by their son's death. He understood that longing. He had felt it when his mother died, that desire to find someone, anyone who could make the pain less. But he also knew the truth. Your Majesty, Taemin said quietly, I am deeply honored. More honored than I can say, but I have to say no. The Empress's face fell. The Emperor's expression became neutral, but Taemin could see the disappointment beneath it. Please let me explain, Taemin said quickly. It's not that I don't want to be part of your family. It's that I already have a family. My mother is gone, but her memory is still with me. She made me who I am. If I become someone else, even someone important like a prince, I feel like I would be leaving her behind. He took a deep breath. And there's something else. There are millions of kids on Earth like me. Kids who lost parents. Kids who have nothing. Kids who need help. If I become a prince and go live on your world, I'd go. 5 years had passed since that cold night in the alley. Taemin stood in front of the mirror in his apartment, adjusting his collar. At 17, he had grown taller and filled out. His face had lost the hollow, hungry look of his childhood, but his eyes still held the same gentle determination they always had. Are you ready? Bora called from the living room. She was 19 now, confident and strong. She had become one of the leading advocates for displaced children worldwide, traveling to dozens of countries to establish support programs. Almost, Taemin replied. Today was important. Today was the 5-year anniversary of first contact, and there would be a memorial ceremony at the monument built where Prince Jae-sung had died. The world had changed dramatically in 5 years. The technology sharing program had eliminated extreme poverty in 17 countries. Hunger was no longer a death sentence anywhere on Earth. Diseases that had killed millions were now easily treatable. Clean energy from Talmora technology was replacing fossil fuels, but it had not been easy. There had been resistance from governments who feared losing power. There had been corporations who fought against free technology that would destroy their profits. There had been hate groups who believed aliens were corrupting humanity. The council that Emperor Taeho had established worked tirelessly to navigate these challenges. Taemin served as one of the youth representatives, bringing the perspective of those who had suffered most under the old system. Commander Haywan remained on Earth as the primary Talmora ambassador, working with human leaders to ensure smooth cooperation. Taemin picked up the pendant that Emperor Taeho had given him. He wore it every day, a reminder of the responsibility he carried. The soft glow pulsed against his chest as he put it on. Nervous? Bora asked when he emerged from his room. A little, Taemin admitted. There will be a lot of people there. And cameras. I never get used to the cameras, Bora laughed. You're one of the most famous people on Earth. When are you going to accept that? Hopefully never, Taemin said with a smile. Famous people think they're important. I'm just trying to help. They took the transport to the memorial site. The Talmora had installed public transport systems in major cities, vehicles that ran silently on energy fields and could carry people anywhere almost instantly. What would have been an hour-long drive took less than 5 minutes. The memorial was beautiful. It stood in the exact spot where Taemin had found the dying prince, but the dirty alley was gone now. In its place was a peaceful garden with flowing water and plants from both Earth and the Talmora homeworld. At the center stood a statue showing 2 figures, a tall Talmora prince and a small human boy, sitting together under a blanket. The inscription read, "Compassion knows no world." Thousands of people had gathered for the ceremony. Humans and Telmora mixed freely in the crowd, talking and laughing together. Children played around the garden, some human, some alien, some adopted into mixed families. Taemin saw familiar faces. Old man Sung was there, looking healthier than Taemin had ever seen him. He now worked as a counselor, helping other homeless people adjust to their new lives. Mrs. Choi sat with her children, all of whom were in school now and thriving. Officer Sang-hoon stood with a group of Telmora warriors, watching the crowd with protective but friendly eyes. Commander Haiwan approached, wearing her ceremonial armor. Over the years, she had become like a mentor to Taemin, teaching him about leadership and diplomacy. She had also become a friend. "The Emperor sends his greetings," she said. "He and the Empress wish they could be here, but matters on the homeworld require their attention. They asked me to place these at the monument on their behalf." She handed Taemin 2 items. One was a flower from the Talmora homeworld, its petals glowing softly. The other was a small hologram projector. "What's the hologram?" Taemin asked. "A message. Private for you alone. The Emperor said you should watch it after the ceremony." The ceremony began with speeches from various leaders. The President of Korea spoke about how the partnership had transformed the nation. The UN Secretary General talked about global cooperation and hope for the future. A Talmora elder explained how Earth had taught their people valuable lessons about compassion and resilience. Then it was Taemin's turn to speak. He walked to the podium slowly, looking out at the sea of faces. 5 years ago he would have been terrified. Now he simply felt the weight of responsibility. 5 years ago, he began, I was a 12-year-old homeless boy with nothing. I was cold, hungry, and afraid. I didn't think about the future because I wasn't sure I would have one. I just tried to survive each day. He paused, collecting his thoughts. Then I found someone who needed help. Someone who was suffering even more than I was. I didn't know he was a prince. I didn't know he was an alien. I just knew he was dying and alone, and I couldn't walk away from that. Taemin touched the pendant at his chest. What happened next changed my life and changed the world. But the most important thing hasn't changed. The most important thing is still the same as it was that night. We are all connected. When someone suffers, we all suffer. When someone is helped, we all benefit. He looked directly at the statue. Prince Jae-sung died far from home. But because of what his death led to, millions of people have found home. People who were lost and forgotten now have shelter and hope. Children who would have died from hunger or disease now have full bellies and health care. That is his legacy. The crowd was completely silent, hanging on his every word. But we cannot forget that the work is not finished. Taemin continued, his voice growing stronger. There are still people suffering. There are still children sleeping in alleys. There are still families torn apart by poverty and war. The Talmora have given us amazing tools to solve these problems. But tools are only useful if we use them. He stepped back from the podium and picked up the blanket he had brought with him. It was new, identical to the one his mother had given him all those years ago. He had it made specifically for this day. This blanket represents what my mother taught me and what Prince Jae-sung reminded me of. We all have something to give. Even when we have almost nothing, we have the ability to care. We have the ability to see suffering and choose to help. That is the most powerful force in the universe. Taemin walked to the statue and carefully draped the blanket over it, covering both the prince and his younger self. I give this blanket to honor all those who have given something they could not afford to give. All those who helped when they had nothing. All those who chose compassion over comfort. The crowd erupted in applause. Many were crying, including Commander Hae-won. Taemin returned to his seat, feeling both exhausted and energized. After the ceremony, people came up to thank him, to share their stories, to take pictures. Taemin spoke with as many as he could, trying to give each person his full attention. This was the hardest part of his work, but also the most important. These were the people he served, the reason for everything he did. When the crowds finally dispersed, Taemin found a quiet spot in the garden. He activated the hologram projector that Emperor Taeho had sent. The Emperor's image appeared, looking older and more tired than the last time Taemin had seen him. But his eyes still held their warmth and wisdom. Greetings, Taemin, the hologram said. If you are watching this, it means 5 years have passed since we first met. I wanted to send you a private message, something just between us. The Emperor's expression grew thoughtful. When my son died, I thought my life was over. I thought there was nothing left worth living for. But then I saw what his death had created. I saw compassion spreading across two worlds. I saw barriers between species falling away. I saw the universe becoming a little bit kinder. He smiled softly. You did that, not just by what you did that night, but by what you have done every day since. You could have taken everything we offered and lived in luxury. Instead, you chose to work. You chose to serve. You chose to stay connected to those who suffer. The Emperor's image seemed to look directly into Taemin's eyes. Jae-sung would have been your age now if he had lived. I often think about what kind of man he would have become. I like to believe he would have been like you. Selfless, compassionate, wise beyond his years. In a way, you have become the son I lost. Not by replacing him, but by honoring everything he believed in. There were tears on the Emperor's face now. I want you to know that the Empress and I love you as if you were our own. Not because you helped our son, but because of who you are. You make us proud every day. You make the entire Talmora people proud. The hologram flickered. I am old now, Taemin. I do not have many years left. When I die, someone else will become Emperor. But before that happens, I wanted to tell you this. You have already done more good in your short life than most beings do in centuries. Whatever happens in the future, know that you have made the universe better. That is the greatest achievement anyone can hope for. The Emperor placed his hand over his heart in the Talmora gesture of respect. Live well, young one, be happy, and never forget that you are loved by two worlds. The hologram faded. Taemin sat in silence for a long time, letting the tears flow freely. They were not tears of sadness, but of gratitude and purpose. There you are, Bora said, finding him in his quiet spot. Everyone's heading to